so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take about a minute and a half to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm sincerely passionate about promoting is Purium. It's no mystery that bringing your mind, body, and spirit into balance is necessary if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and grandest version of themselves. So if you've been looking for a way to easily get organic superfoods into your system every day with a simple plan that can help you reestablish a healthier foundation and relationship with food, like I was doing before I found Purium, I highly recommend going to positivehead.com/transformation and checking out the videos and interviews there where I dive deeply into discussions explaining why I take these products every day. And should you ultimately end up on iShopPurium.com to purchase any of their 50 plus amazing superfood products, be sure to use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for a 25% discount. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. Here we grow again. It is a terrific Thursday here in the studio. I'm sing-songing today as I talk. Maybe it's because we're going to hear from Walt Whitman, Walty. I'm looking at a picture of him. He kind of looks like Gandalf. He's badass. He looks super cool. I want to look like that one day. Everyone's going to have to run and look him up now. Walt Whitman, the American poet, essayist, journalist. Very, very well-known American poet. Referred to as the father of the free verse. Talked a lot about nature. You're probably familiar with Leaves of Grass poetry collection. And Richard Rudd is going to give his breakdown of Sir Whitman here. And if you've been listening along over the last couple months, I've been sharing Richard Rudd, who is an incredible author, poet himself, transcribed the gene keys, which is like a modern divination method that looks at your genetic, your genetic predispositions, if you will, and what sort of potentialities lie dormant in your own genes. Check out, if you go back to episode 722, where I had a soul share with him, and you can hear all about the fascinating story, how the gene keys were downloaded to him. And, now many decades later, they're this very popular book. And for those of you who like astrology and things like that, you're going to love gene keys and understanding more about the dormant dormant, or maybe not dormant, the blossoming potentials in your genetic code. But so what Richard Rudd has also done is he has done a series called the Ecstatics, and as he puts it, a pilgrimage through the heart minds in history, people that the band of extraordinary people who have found the answer to the question of love. And so we're getting down to the last one here today. Walt Whitman, he was born in, I think, early 1800s. And it's a little bit on the long side. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. But, listening to Richard talk and wax poetic about these ecstatics is, I could listen to him for hours and hours. And I know you guys enjoy him too. So I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to be quiet for now and let Richard take over with... and by the way, you can go to his website is genekeys.com if you want to pull up your chart, your genetic chart, your gene keys chart, and then the book helps you to interpret it all. But so check him out. Check out my soul share with him, and check out this ecstatic, all about the wonderful Walt Whitman. Till next time, journey well. Love you all so much.
So hello everyone, here we are once again, floating in the quantum stuff of the universe, gathered together beneath the stars. So let's have a little warm-up journey. I want to imagine that we're all gathered together beneath the stars, as if we'd all risen early before dawn and stolen out on tiptoe out of our homes to muster silently here before the golden orb of the sun has emerged. And here we stand, whispering our hushed welcomes in the early morning mist, dragon smoke curling from our mouths, gathered together in anticipation, in excited and reverent awe, ready to undertake another journey into another world, into another lifetime. Again, let's prepare ourselves for the dawn. Sit yourself down on the moist earth. Let's not worry that our clothes will get wet and the coldness will soak us. Once the sun's risen, we'll soon dry out. Let's huddle up close in our circle to keep warm. It's freezing out here. There's ice on the ground. Look up above our heads. The stars are so dazzling, sparkling like a black panther's eyes, filled with mystery and purpose. Let's feel the warmth of each other's bodies, pressing closer together, and feel the chattering of our teeth as the coldness keeps on bringing us closer and closer. And feel the person next to you, an unknown person, but feel the welcome, sensuous warmth emanating from their beautiful, vibrant body. Hold hands with those on each side of you. Rub your hands with the strangers on each side of you. Let's generate some friction, some heat, and turn to look in their eyes. There's nothing like the sudden, trusting smile of a stranger. And let's feel our bodies rubbing up against one another, and let go of any inhibitions. There's no need of any shame here. We're all the same in the darkness beneath the stars. We're all here for the same sacred purpose. We're all one human family. And slowly, as we feel warmer, the sun is coming up and the light is growing. A wonderful spectral crepuscular half-light, throwing disparate shapes into trees now, revealing details out of the void, shocking the world gently out of sleep and dreams. We can hear the creatures rousing, and the birdsong becoming denser, intenser, rising to a jubilant pitch, a world groaning beneath the weight of birdsong, a world awakening. And now we can see each other's faces coming out of the gloom, old faces, young faces, scars, dimples, moles, freckles, men's faces, women's faces, children's faces, all beautiful, all marvellous, all with eyes still quivering with the stars, all with openness, all strong with vulnerability, all innocent and without masks, without agenda, without ego. Ah, the love in those faces, the stories written on those faces, the struggle, the love, the wonder, the hardship, the rage, the daring, the surrender. These are the multitudinous faces of humanity, endlessly writing, endlessly singing, endlessly living, endlessly dying. Let us stand now together, rising as one, palms interlocked, as we, the human heart, rise to greet the precious dawn. Cold, wet, soaking legs and arses, dampness hanging off us as we lift ourselves off the sodden earth and into the wealth of light as the golden halo crests that curving, sinuous earth line and stuns us with her sudden aurora of incandescent light. And feel the sun burning into your eyelids, red gold, pinpoint shafts drilling into your flesh, into your sinews, melting your damp nighttime dreams. This is our awakening. This is our jubilation. To salute the world as she comes into being. We're the circle of timeless human beings. We are the secret ones, the Illuminati of the Golden Dawn, spread out across the globe, coming into the form, leaving the form, dipping, diving, exploding, soaring, causing change and stir and shake up wherever we alight. We are the ecstatics. Where others are sleeping, we are awake. Where others suffer in anguish, we soar in ecstasy. We are the place where the world is always celebrating. We're there queuing up nights before the event, camping out before the world awakens. We are the secret people, and our thoughts are silent, and our feelings dart like swifts across the shining skies. Our hearts are aflame with the tears of our knowing. So welcome back to the Ecstatics, you who are listening. You the risk-taker. You the celestial vagabond. You the lonesome cosmic gypsy. You the teller of tales, the liver of fables, the wanderer and the wanderer through the sacred halls of incarnation. So you're here again. Well then, let's breathe together, unhampered by time and space. Pearlescent in the quantum field. Here we lie, we lovers, our souls an hourglass, eternally bonded in perfect parabola, an orbit of ecstasy sculpted in sand. And the world is busy with the hum and the thrum of the insects and the birds and the bees and the animals and the creatures. All breathing together. So breathe and let the tempo of ecstasy be aroused within your cells once again. Open up the pathways, activate the neurons, stir the chemicals that engender that deep state of harmonic blissfulness. Breathe into your chest, into your heart, into your sternum. Let it rise up within you from your base. Let your heart come right up into your mouth And let it sigh, the sigh of the ecstatic. The groan that only means one thing. You're alive. You're human. You're an ecstatic. You're ready. So perhaps you have a little foretaste of our pilgrimage today from our little warm-up. And Walt would certainly have been there, his great beard glistening in the threshold of that circle. His eyes a sparkle with another dawn, because here is a man who greeted many a dawn in that way, whether in company or alone. Walt Whitman. Here's a man who lived life out in the open, a man unafraid of others, unafraid of life, a man of the inner and the outer wilderness, who lived for the day and the night, and who loved everything and everyone for what they are. So in homage to Walt, today it's the summer solstice, and I've climbed up a beautiful green hill in the wilds of Dartmoor, and I'm sitting here amidst a cluster of granite blocks, ancient blocks, timeless, thousands and millions of years old. It's a wilderness. It's the wilderness of one of the wildernesses of Britain. And I can think of no better place than to speak about Walt than here, in my own country. So Walt Whitman was born in the year 1819, at that precipitous time when so many modern ecstatics came thundering out of the void and sculpted a new face out of the world. And as you may now know, I'm not really one for biography. Although Walt might say that there is some importance in knowing the extent of a man's ordinariness, because that's how you may well measure his greatness. In any case, the question I want to ask myself here today is, why Walt Whitman? You know, there are so many ecstatics to choose from. There are so many timeless poets and bards of the blissful fields. You know, many lived far more exalted lives than he. So I don't quite know why. I think because he chose me. I think that's how it works. He summoned me from the inner planes. He called me softly. He called me over and whispered sweet nothings in my ear. "Smile," he said. "Smile, O voluptuous, cool-breathed earth, earth of the slumbering and liquid trees, earth of departed sunset, earth of the mountain's misty top, earth of vitreous pour of the full moon just tinged with blue, earth of shine and dark mottling the tide of the river, earth of the limpid grey of clouds brighter and clearer for my sake, far swooping elbowed earth, rich apple-blossomed earth, smile, for your lover comes." One of the greatest lovers to come out of the West is Walt Whitman. Even the great Eastern mystic Osho said of Walt Whitman that no other American has been so wise. So if Walt is here for anything, he's here for this, to remind you of who you are. Because you are above all else and beyond all else a lover. Every human being is a lover. You know, being an ecstatic, it's really the coolest thing on the earth. It's so cool to be this hot. I mean, who doesn't envy Don Juan? You know, what man doesn't want to be him? What woman doesn't want to be touched by him, by that? And Walt, what he offers is the poetry of the lovers, the poetry of the senses, ecstasy of the senses. It's rich, it's unctuous, it's flowing, it's wild, and above all, it's untamed and untamable. Ah, yes. You better watch out with Uncle Walt. He's up for anything. He's up for everything. He's a celebrator, a liberator. Above all, he's a lover. He's a lover of the flesh as much as a lover of the spirit. He's this great Dionysian figure of the inner planes. He begins his journey with his humanity, with lust, with the gorgeousness of lust. He's a deeply sexual man. And he introduces a kind of wild Western tantra to the modern, cosseted, moralistic world. Wild Western tantra. I love that. But the thing about Walt is he's no revolutionary, because that's not really his trip. He's a rebel, but he's not a revolutionary. He doesn't bring a message. He's no teacher. Not really. He has no interest in that. He's a liver, a luster, a man of grand appetite and passion. And yet he isn't coarse. You know, without his poetic soul, he'd be nothing but coarse. Believe me. He'd be violent, aggressive, selfish. And yet Walt is none of those things. Because he's taken these brute qualities and he's breathed the soul of subtlety into them. He's dropped some divine homeopathic essence of the gods into his lower nature. And it's reached such an exaltation within him that he almost can't believe it himself. This is from possibly the greatest of all his poems, Song of Myself, which we'll be hearing quite a bit of. I believe in you, my soul. The other I am must not abase itself to you, and you must not be abased to the other. Loaf with me on the grass. Loose the stop from your throat. Not words, not music or rhyme I want, not custom or lecture, not even the best. Only the lull I like, the hum of your valved voice. I mind how once we lay, such a transparent summer morning, how you settled your head athwart my hips and gently turned over upon me, and parted the shirt from my bosom bone, and plunged your tongue to my bare stripped heart, and reached till you felt my beard, and reached till you held my feet. Swiftly arose and spread around me the peace and knowledge that pass all the argument of the earth. And I know that the hand of God is the brother of my own, and that all the men ever born are also my brothers, and the women my sisters and lovers, and that a kelson of the creation is love, and limitless are leaves, stiff or drooping in the fields, and brown ants in the little wells beneath them, and mossy scabs of the worm fence, heaped stones, elder, mullein, and pokeweed. And so often he returns in his ecstasy and grounds it here in the earth, in the small things, the plants and the herbs, the insects and the leaves. This is where I sit now, surrounded by all those things. And these are the most precious things of the earth. It's as though you were told you have a single day left to live, and then you go outside and you look down at the ground. And when before all you perhaps seen were weeds, now you see gold all around you. A simple pebble takes on a miraculous quality, or a humble daisy might just crack your heart wide open and bring you to tears. To see the world through this man's eyes is to see the delicate, ephemeral beauty of the world around us in all its magnificent intensity. It's almost too much for us to bear when we open all the way. It threatens to unhinge us, to tear us apart from seam to aching seam. How will we handle it? And this is the ecstatic anguish of the deep lover of life. And as Walt says, a kelson of the creation is love. And a kelson is a keel on a ship. So it keeps creation upright. And it gives us stability, direction, and purpose. Love. And this is the hallmark of the ecstatic. That he or she has discovered the greatest secret. That life is about love. And that's it. So why did Walt choose me? Perhaps that's what I should be asking. Now, I fancy he has some things to impart through this series that others have not yet imparted. So I've been thinking about this, and on reflection I feel that there are two things that really come up as areas begging for deeper contemplation. And the first is that Walt Whitman is America. It's as if his being has become so interfused with the spirit of America that he's somehow breathed something of his heart into the foundation of its constitution, of its great dream, the dream that America stands for. And he really imbibed the young dream that was America. And his poetry is that of the pioneer, the human being carving a life at the threshold of the known and the unknown. And what then is America? What's it founded upon above all else? Life, liberty, freedom. These are the values that Walt upheld throughout his life. At the time he was born, America was a great dream coming into being. And it represented all that was possible for humanity. It was a kind of structure for us to rebuild Eden. And of course it hasn't exactly turned into Eden, but the dream still remains hanging there. And many times throughout history, people have tried to bring other people together in order to recreate civilization based on the higher values of love and freedom. Although interestingly enough, it doesn't mention love, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Not quite the same thing, is it? It takes a lot of courage to say the word love. Just to talk about it in public. It just takes courage. Isn't that ridiculous? Anyway, the masses weren't ready. The leaders weren't ready. Walt was only one man, and there were others. There were great early American souls who helped to forge the identity of the so-called American dream. One man, greatly admired by Walt, was Abraham Lincoln, who Walt once famously referred to as, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," in this great poem he wrote after Lincoln's assassination. But Lincoln was a rare politician, a moral man, and he brought great unity during the greatest crisis the US has ever known, the American Civil War. And both he and Walt lived through the war, and their creative energies were undoubtedly drained greatly by the war. And in many ways, I think it took some of the light out of Walt. Because as he became older, his poems slightly lost some of that early, ecstatic, youthful spirit of the pioneer. And there were also others. There were great men. It was like a collective upsurge at that time. Emerson, Thoreau, John Muir, and other pioneering thinkers and revolutionaries and dreamers of their day. Ecologists. There was this great surging movement welling up at this time. It was a kind of renaissance as the new world was being born. So it's important to get a sense of the time that Walt Whitman was living through. You know, there was so much potential, and then yet in the centre of it all there was this most horrendous of wars, all giving birth to what we now know as modern America. And we keep seeing this pattern through this series, the Ecstatics, that wherever there's ecstasy, there also seems to be the horror of war. With Rilke, it was the Second World War. With Mother Julian, it was the 100 Years' War. Now it's the American Civil War. And Walt Whitman was one of the great midwives of modern America. And if you've ever travelled through the American wilderness, at some level, you will have felt his spirit. Because he put it there, he left it there. He imbued the rocks with himself. The vast open skies of the prairies, the yawning mountain passes of the Rockies, the high desert plateaus and the rich ancient forests, and the rivers that flow everywhere like the dense tangles of Walt's great beard. It's not hard to see why this landscape inspired such a dream. And Walt Whitman stands central to this dream, not so much as a shaper on the outer planes, but as the holder of the inner vision, a vision keeper, the tremendous, unquenchable idealism that surges endlessly from an open human heart. That's what he claimed. So, Walt Whitman is everything that could have been, and that still could be, will be. A great rebel, a vast man, a vast paradoxical man. In his own words, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. And yet human beings had not matured enough in his day. They still haven't quite matured enough today. And you can see from what the dream has become that we're still in our infancy. And there's no judgment in this. We're just a young race. And yet all children move through great transitionary phases. These mutative, chaotic periods in which their whole chemistry undergoes dramatic reshaping. Even now our species finds itself in one of these eras. And we're going to have to let go of all our obsessions. We're going to have to bring together our science and our mysticism. And America is a symbol of that. It was founded upon a great inner ideal, and yet it's lost touch with that. You know, it may be the highest peak of civilization on the external planes, and yet now it's lost and is grappling for its identity. It's floundering on the inner planes. And when you lose touch with the centre, with the reason and purpose for your existence, with the beating heart, the inner higher purpose, then soon you know that the structure will crumble. It's inevitable. Without a centre, how can anything hold itself together? So, this whole notion of America, it's not about America, it's about the world. He wasn't an American poet. He was a world poet. And yet America needs Whitman now. It needs him. It needs the lover. It can still be saved. Not the ailing system, not the structure. You know, that's going to have to go. Maybe a few bits will remain. But in the heart of the people, and in their connection and in their love for the earth and liberty, you know, that spirit of freedom still resides. It's in the people. It's in the earth. It's in the sinews of the body. It's in the incarnation. It's in the dirt. When you connect with the earth in this way, you become one with all humanity, with all countries, with all nations, and with all people. You become universal. And this is Walt Whitman's vision for America, to embrace all peoples. And you can see that the vision half worked. It's working at some level. America consists of all nations, and yet it remains deeply divided within itself and all around the world. Its doors are still firmly closed. Here's some poetry that shows how universal Walt Whitman is. All you continentals of Asia, Africa, Europe, Australia, indifferent of place, all you on the numberless islands of the archipelagos of the sea, and you of centuries hence when you listen to me. That's us. And you each and everywhere whom I specify not, but include just the same. Health to you, goodwill to you all, from me and America sent. Each of us is inevitable, each of us limitless, each of us with his or her right upon the earth, each of us allowed the eternal purports of the earth, each of us here as divinely as any is here. And then he goes on and summons up some of the people around the earth. You Austral Negro, naked, red, sooty, you Kafra, Berber, Sudanese, you haggard, uncouth, untutored Bedowi, you plague swarms in Madras, Nankin, Kabul, Cairo, you benighted roamer of Amazonia, you Patagonian, you Fiji man. I do not prefer others so very much before you either. I do not say one word against you, away back there where you stand. You will come forward in due time to my side. He doesn't mean America there, he means the spirit of the universal human being. And he goes on, my spirit has passed in compassion and determination around the whole earth. I have looked for equals and lovers and found them ready for me in all lands. I think some divine rapport has equalized me with them. You vapours, I think I have risen with you, moved away to distant continents and fall down there for reasons. I think I have blown with you, you winds. You waters, I have fingered every shore with you. I have run through what any river or strait of the globe has run through. I have taken my stand on the bases of peninsulas and on the high embedded rocks to cry thence, Salut au monde! What cities the light or warmth penetrates, I penetrate those cities myself. All islands to which birds wing their way, I wing their way myself. Toward you all, in America's name, I raise high the perpendicular hand. I make the signal to remain after me in sight forever for all the haunts and homes of men. You see, politicians have used that kind of rhetoric. Ah, dear. But they haven't embodied it. Walt embodied it. That was his dream. And he embodied it. And the other thing about Walt is that his poetry, the style of his poetry, is for everyone. It's so earthy. It's so, in some places, vulgar and coarse. But it's beautiful. This is from Song of Myself. Walt Whitman, an American, one of the roughs, a cosmos, disorderly, fleshy and sensual, eating, drinking and breeding, no sentimentalist, no stander above men and women, or apart from them, no more modest than immodest. Unscrew the locks from the doors, unscrew the doors themselves from their jambs. Whoever degrades another degrades me, and whatever is done or said returns at last to me. And whatever I do or say, I also return. Through me the afflatus surging and surging, through me the current and index. I speak the password primeval. I give the sign of democracy. By God, I will accept nothing which all cannot have their counterpart of on the same terms. Through me many long dumb voices, voices of the interminable generations of slaves, voices of prostitutes and of deformed persons, voices of the diseased and despairing, and of thieves and dwarfs, voices of cycles of preparation and accretion, and of the threads that connect the stars, and of wombs, and of the father stuff, and of the rights of them the others are down upon, of the trivial and flat and foolish and despised, of fog in the air and beetles rolling balls of dung. That's who Walt's talking to. You get it? He's talking to everyone. I mean, when he came out with this poetry, it was the poetry of everyone. Anyone could read it. Anyone could understand it. And anyone could relate to it. Man, it pissed off some of the intelligentsia. One of the things I love about America is its ego. I love how grand an ego it has. The pioneering ego, the rebel. It's so necessary for the ecstatic. You know, here in Britain, it's not so easy to find an ecstatic. Not an open one, anyway. We're too cautious a race. Our ego's great, but it's hidden behind this fearful nature. But the USA is the land where anything is possible. So there you're going to find the greatest egoists, openly. And I have nothing at all against egoists. They're often the closest to the ecstatics. And the difference is only in heart. The ecstatic will also praise himself or herself and his achievements. But the frequency of that is completely different. You know, listen to Walt in this poem called Excelsior. Who's gone furthest? For I would go further. And who has been just? For I would be the most just person of the earth. And who most cautious? For I would be more cautious. And who has been happiest? Oh, I think it is I. I think no one was ever happier than I. And who has lavished all? For I lavish constantly the best I have. And who proudest? For I think I have reason to be the proudest son alive, for I am the son of the brawny and tall-topped city. And who has been bold and true? For I would be the boldest and truest being of the universe. And who benevolent? For I would show more benevolence than all the rest. And who has received the love of the most friends? For I know that what it is to receive the passionate love of many friends. And who possesses a perfect and enamoured body? For I do not believe anyone possesses a more perfect or enamoured body than mine. And who thinks the amplest thoughts? For I would surround those thoughts. And who has made hymns fit for the earth? For I am mad with devouring ecstasy to make joyous hymns for the whole earth. I mean, you really have to stretch your spirit wide to write a poem like that, a song like that. The ecstatic is usually so far ahead of his or her time. And it's always that way. Because the ecstatic is a rebel. You know, he or she has to break through the existent paradigm. You know, Walt's poetry is unique. His style is flowing, it's colloquial, it's almost prosaic. Rhyme is not usually considered at all, nor meter. But still his poem flows organically, following your sinews, rippling vaporous around your head, and lilting like a mountain brook. You know, he himself has said of his greatest body of work, Leaves of Grass, it's called. He said, "It's a sortie, whether to prove triumphant and conquer its field of aim and escape and construction, nothing less than 100 years from now can fully answer." And that was about 120 years ago he said that. He wrote those words. So, I want to say that, Walt, we can say that finally you've come of age. We've finally caught up with you. And yet still you're ahead of the curve. But we do you great honour now, here on this solstice. And we offer you our deepest heartfelt thanks for your courage. And may we be borne along in the body of your heart and vision. Walt was alive at such a time. And his is really the first real English poetry of the collective. And I say that as a lover and knower of poetry. It's so universal. It's so wealthy. Listen to this. This is some prose that Walt wrote as kind of autobiographical. My book and I. When he says my book, he means all his collected poems, Leaves of Grass. What a period we have presumed to span. Those 30 years from 1850 to 80, and America in them. Proud, proud indeed may we be, if we have culled enough of that period in its own spirit to worthily waft a few live breaths of it to the future. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're imbibing the spirit of those years, those 30 years in which a huge collective dream was born in the Western world. I mean, he really understands the collective and the way it works, Walt Whitman. Here he says about, in the same piece of writing, think in comparison of the petty envirage and limited area of the poets of past or present Europe, no matter how great their genius. Think of the absence and ignorance, in all cases hitherto, of the multitudinousness, vitality, and the unprecedented stimulants of today and here. It almost seems, this is the key sentence, it almost seems as if a poetry with cosmic and dynamic features of magnitude and limitlessness suitable to the human soul were never possible before. And you have to understand about Walt Whitman is that he's a big man. He speaks with courage. He knows that he will be judged. He knows that people will say he has no humility. Because he's not talking about himself. He's just a herald. He's just one of the pioneers. His poetry, his style, his song, his vision was just an upsurge of the collective. And he knew and felt that. And he embodied that. And that's what makes him great. That's what makes him an ecstatic, is that he wasn't trying. So I said that there were two things about Walt Whitman that I really wanted to go deeply into. The first was the vision that is America, and that vision is not just a continent, it is a world vision. And wherever it takes place in the future, however it takes place, the seed was sown in that land. And let's hope that it grows and continues to spread from that land. And the other aspect is probably connected, but very different. It's something else entirely, and it's really one of the greatest keys. It's sex. And that's where I want to go now. And in a way it was inevitable, doing a pilgrimage of this kind, that sooner or later we're going to have to look deeply into sex. Because sex is the fuel of ecstasy. And Walt is a deeply sexual man. And his poetry expresses his sexuality so profoundly that it was always going to be shocking at the time that he was born. So even today, these Whitman scholars, all around the world, armies of fools, armed with pens, argue about Walt's sexual preferences. You know, many of them have been going around saying he's gay because he wrote so evidently about the beauty of the male body. And, you know, I just want to kick someone. Because like many wiser old men, he drew to him many beautiful young men. And the question often comes up around such beings. And as you access the ecstatic planes inside yourself, your relationship to sex just naturally changes. You become, in a way, more of a bisexual. And you lose your sexual identity. And literally the borders of gender begin to fade. And our relationship to our gender is one of the last aspects of our separateness to dissolve when we enter through the portal of realization, of enlightenment. It's really our deepest agenda, our gender. We have to let go of male or female, man, woman. And love allows us to do that, to transcend gender. So as I said, Walt was a lover, and we ecstatics are lovers. And it's the best and closest word you can use to describe us. Even before a poet, I'm a lover. And all the lover really wants is to be received. You know, he or she wants to be unburdened of their love. It's a kind of hunger. And, you know, there are stories of Sufis chasing people down in the streets, looking for people to unburden them of their great love, of the weight of it. So traditionally, that's why the master-disciple relationship has grown up. You know, the master and the devotee, they're both hungry, but in different ways, and in different dimensions. The devotee is hungry to taste more love, to touch the vast field of the Master's ineffable love and presence, but less spoken about. The Master too is hungry, in a way. He or she is hungry to be unburdened of their love. It's such a sweet pressure. And the devotee will drink like a bee the nectar that the Master emanates. And of course, when sex and spirituality come together, you so often get entanglement. This confusion that arises, the drama, the rumour, all these things that occur when sex and spirituality meet. And in Walt Whitman, you don't get this, at least I don't feel it. You get utter honesty, you get complete transparency, because he's fearless when it comes to the flesh. I mean, if you could graft Walt Whitman onto the traditional Eastern master, you would have a complete version of spirituality. He's so vulnerable, Walt is, and yet he's so comfortable in his vulnerability. One of his great ecstatic poems is called I Sing the Body Electric. Wonderful beginning for a poem. And he also talks simply about his love of just being near people, just being near flesh. I've perceived that to be with those I like is enough. To stop in company with the rest at evening is enough. To be surrounded by beautiful, curious, breathing, laughing flesh is enough. To pass among them or touch anyone or rest my arm ever so lightly round his or her neck for a moment. What is this then? I do not ask any more delight. I swim in it as in a sea. There is something in staying close to men and women and looking on them and in the contact and odour of them that pleases the soul well. All things please the soul, but these please the soul well. And then he talks his wonderful words about the female form. Listen to this and tell me if you think he's gay after you've heard this. This is the female form. A divine nimbus exhales from it from head to foot. It attracts with fierce, undeniable attraction. I am drawn by its breath, as if I were no more than a helpless vapour. All falls aside but myself and it. Books, art, religion, time, the visible and solid earth, and what was expected of heaven or feared of hell are now consumed. Mad filaments, ungovernable shoots play out of it, the response likewise ungovernable. Hair, bosom, hips, bend of legs, negligent falling hands, all diffused, mine too diffused. Ebb stung by the flow and flow stung by the ebb, love flesh swelling and deliciously aching, limitless limpid jets of love, hot and enormous, quivering jelly of love, white blow and delirious juice, bridegroom night of love, working surely and softly into the prostrate dawn, undulating into the willing and yielding day, lost in the cleave of the clasping and sweet-fleshed day. This the nucleus. After the child is born of woman, man is born of woman. This the bath of birth. This the merge of small and large, and the outlet again. Be not ashamed, women. Your privilege encloses the rest, and is the exit of the rest. You are the gates of the body, and you are the gates of the soul. The female contains all qualities and tempers them. She is in her place and moves with perfect balance. She is all things duly veiled. She is both passive and active. She is to conceive daughters as well as sons, and sons as well as daughters. As I see my soul reflected in nature, as I see through a mist, one with inexpressible completeness, sanity, beauty, see the bent head and arms folded over the breast. The female I see. I mean, do you still think he's gay? And who the hell cares? Who isn't gay somewhere inside themselves? And some fools say it isn't natural. Ha! I laugh at you. What isn't natural in existence? You tell me. Look at the animal kingdom. Tell me you don't see all kinds of sexuality there. The male seahorse who carries the eggs. The male Dana dragonfly, which has sex with more males than females. The female spider that has sex with the male and then eats him. I mean, they're all at it. Existence allows for everything. It invites everything. It's an exploration into everything. Life is innocent. Those fools with their guilt and their shame. There's nothing wrong under the sun. It's not possible to make a mistake in life. And because Walt is not here physically to speak for himself, I will do so. I am doing so. To study a man's life, his biography, is not enough to know him. You can't even skim the surface of him. A human being is a soul. If you want to know him, you have to know what he has known. Then only can you know him. So, to know Walt, you're going to have to be a courageous inner lover. Man, are you going to have to expand and open your heart. You have to be willing to go naked on a bus, or embrace with an open heart the dark side of another. You're going to have to let go of your agenda and all of its issues, preferences and patterns. You're going to have to get dirty if you want to know Walt. Only when you really come into his world can you see for yourself how pure and how shimmering it really is. So I say that to you critics all over the world discussing Walt and his sexuality and his politics and all the other crap. And Walt, he knew the dark side. You know, how could a man not, with a soul as great as this? Now listen to these words. Hours continuing long, sore and heavy-hearted, hours of the dusk, when I withdraw to a lonesome and unfrequented spot, seating myself, leaning my face in my hands. Hours sleepless, deep in the night, when I go forth, speeding swiftly the country roads, or through the city streets, or pacing miles and miles, stifling plaintive cries. Hours discouraged, distracted, for the one I cannot content with myself without. Soon I saw him content himself without me. Hours when I am forgotten. Oh, weeks and months are passing, but I believe I am never to forget. Sullen and suffering hours. I am ashamed, but it is useless. I am what I am. Hours of my torment. I wonder if other men ever have the like out of the like feelings. You know, Walt Whitman knows the dark side. He just knows it. He is it. He embraces it. It's his baseline. I am as bad as the worst, but thank God, I am as good as the best. There's a one-liner. I am as bad as the worst, but thank God I am as good as the best. So yes to sex. Because to know ecstasy is to know sex. Sex is everything. It's everywhere. In all dimensions. There's carnal sex, that's one thing. Lust, libido, craving, hunger, desire. It's the urge to either penetrate or be penetrated. And you can't have one without the other. And yet when you raise that to another plane, it becomes the spiritual seeker. Because sex is what makes us seek. And so many people miss this one out. They go straight to seeking without going through sex. And I tell you, that's dangerous business. Because we all know what happens when you try and bypass your natural urges. Sex is the fuel of ecstasy. The ecstatic is such a sexual, sensual being. The fire of their ecstasy arises from the moisture of the genital regions of the body. Sex, desire, hunger, it's all rooted in the astral plane, in the emotional body. You know, one of the greatest sexual poems written by Walt is this one. It's called A Woman Waits for Me. A woman waits for me. She contains all. Nothing is lacking. Yet all were lacking if sex were lacking. or if the moisture of the right man were lacking. Sex contains all: bodies, souls, meanings, proofs, purities, delicacies, results, promulgations, songs, commands, health, pride, and maternal mystery, the seminal milk, all hopes, benefactions, bestowals, all the passions, loves, beauties, delights of the earth, all the governments, judges, gods, followed persons of the earth, these are contained in sex as parts of itself and justifications of itself. Without shame the man I like knows and avows the deliciousness of his sex. Without shame the woman I like knows and avows hers. Now I will dismiss myself from impassive women. I will go stay with her who waits for me, and with those women that are warm-blooded and sufficient for me. I see that they understand me and do not deny me. I see that they are worthy of me. I will be the robust husband of those women. They are not one jot less than I am. They are tanned in the face by shining suns and blowing winds. Their flesh has the old divine suppleness and strength. They know how to swim, row, ride, wrestle, shoot, run, strike, retreat, advance, resist, defend themselves. They are ultimate in their own right. They are calm, clear, well possessed of themselves. I draw you close to me, you women. I cannot let you go. I would do you good. I am for you, and you are for me, not only for our own sake, but for others' sakes. Enveloped in you sleep greater heroes and bards. They refuse to awake at the touch of any man but me. It is I, you women. I make my way. I am stern, acrid, large, undissuadable, but I love you. I do not hurt you any more than is necessary for you. I pour the stuff to start sons and daughters fit for these states. I press with slow, rude muscle. I brace myself effectually. I listen to no entreaties. I dare not withdraw till I deposit what has so long accumulated within me. Through you I drain the pent-up rivers of myself. In you I wrap 1,000 onward years. On you I graft the grafts of the best beloved of me and America. The drops I distill upon you shall grow fierce and athletic girls, new artists, musicians and singers. The babes I beget upon you are to beget babes in their turn. I shall demand perfect men and women out of my love spendings. I shall expect them to interpenetrate with others, as I and you interpenetrate now. I shall count on the fruits of the gushing showers of them, as I count on the fruits of the gushing showers I give now. I shall look for loving crops from the birth, life, death, immortality I plant so lovingly now. I plant so lovingly now. That's such a powerful, beautiful poem. It's so written by a man. As a man, I relate to that poem so much. You know, things like here, where he says, I would do you good, and I do not hurt you any more than is necessary for you. That's such a powerful thing to say, because it's like saying, I won't hold anything back. You know, and with me comes everything. Comes the shadow, comes the gift, comes the city, comes everything. And also he's speaking as an ecstatic, he's speaking for the ecstatics, saying that, you know, when you fully embrace the ecstasy inside yourself and you make love to a woman as a man, then the seed that you sow is so vital. You know, and when that becomes a child, that child is a golden child, because that child was conceived by a man who was empowered, self-empowered. And the female allows a man to be self-empowered. And Walt is looking for those women. You know, a true man is looking for the woman who can receive all of him and meet him halfway, meet him exactly at the level that he is coming forward at. Vulnerable, open, powerful. A beautiful poem. And I'm going to go back now to the Song of Myself, which is really the great sexual poem of Walt Whitman. so rich with sexuality. Through me, forbidden voices, voices of sexes and lusts, voices veiled, and I remove the veil, voices indecent by me clarified and transfigured. I do not press my finger across my mouth. I keep as delicate around the bowels as around the head and heart. Copulation is no more rank to me than death is. I believe in the flesh and the appetites. Seeing, hearing, and feeling are miracles, and each part and tag of me is a miracle. Divine am I, inside and out, and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. The scent of these armpits is aroma finer than prayer. This head is more than churches or Bibles or creeds. If I worship any particular thing, it shall be some of the spread of my body. Translucent mould of me, it shall be you. Shaded ledges and rests. Firm masculine culture, it shall be you. Whatever goes to the tilth of me, it shall be you. You, my rich blood, your milky stream, pale strippings of my life, breast that presses against other breasts, it shall be you. My brain, it shall be your occult convolutions, root of washed sweet flag, timorous pond snipe, nest of guarded duplicate eggs, it shall be you. Mixed tousled hay of head and beard and brawn, it shall be you. Trickling sap of maple, fibre of manly wheat, it shall be you. Sun so generous, it shall be you. Vapours lightning and shading my face. Vapours lighting and shading my face, it shall be you. You sweaty brooks and dews, it shall be you. Winds whose soft tickling genitals rub against me, it shall be you. Broad muscular fields, branches of live oak, loving lounger in my winding paths, it shall be you. Hands I have taken, face I have kissed, mortal I have ever touched, it shall be you. I dote on myself. There is that lot of me, and all so luscious. Each moment and whatever happens thrills me with joy. It's all about sex. Even the earth is about sex. And it's all about innocence. You can see that Walt... I just love that bit about the aroma of my armpits is finer than the most sacred prayer. Yeah, it's just absolutely true. And heretical, and I love its heretical nature. It's about acceptance. You know, Walt Whitman came 200 years early. He stands for the Edenic consciousness, for the new world, for the vision of a world reborn. And he hoped that the USA would become that world. And yet it didn't, of course. It hasn't yet. And it's why he rather lost his way later in his life. Because when he was young and these poetic transmissions, these leaves of grass, when they poured through him, he thought that now was the time. And then, over time, he became disappointed. And the world he foresaw was a world in which sex is freedom, in which the human sexuality had once again become whole, because its acceptance and its innocence is transformed into love when you trust it, and when you allow it just to live inside your body and inside your being. You know, Walt Whitman always looked to nature, and he often looked at the animal kingdom to understand sex in its purest form. When he talked about animals in one poem, and he said, "They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Not one is dissatisfied. Not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Not one kneels to another, nor to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth." I think there he really nails it. And this is great Walt Whitman, because Walt is not for respectability. He's for respect, but he's not for respectability. Because respectability is about compromising your own truth. More often than not, it's about compromising your own truth. Respectability is about compromising your own spontaneity for the sake of the social niceties or duty or responsibility. And Walt really is an idealist of the highest order. He's that rarest of men that's both a utopian and a realist. He knows the world. He lives in the world. He lives deep down in the ditches of the world. He celebrates the scum and the dirt and the dross. He knows the real. Like Oscar Wilde said, we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Walt is looking at the stars. His spirit's already there, at the highest frequencies, seeing the world as it is, despite the way we humans place our constrictions on it. So for Walt, life is so simple. Sex is life. Everything is life. Everything is sex. He's a tantric genius, Walt Whitman, though he knew it not. Because he's for the yes. He's for the barbaric yawp sounded across the rooftops of the world. He's the celebrant. He's the ecstatic. He's an American dervish. He's a mast, a divine drunk, wandering the world. He's vital, hairy, natural, unstudied, wild. That's Walt at his best. And yes, he came too early for his taste, but perfectly in time for us now. Now his poetry is ripe. It's ripened. It's like this great claret, this great wine. It's matured and it's been in the cellar and it's now reaching its peak. Because the conditions are ready, the people are ready. They're ready for this poetry. They're ready for this consciousness, this transmission. And when you uncork a bottle of his poetry, you uncork a transmission whose time is now. As the great change is moving into the world, as this new Jerusalem that he dreamed of is just now beginning to touch down on the earth. And they're brave, these pioneers, brave early flowerings of consciousness. And no doubt his spirit is here now, with me as I speak these words. And perhaps even in the world again, alive and incarnate, pregnant with genius, ready now for the real dream to unfold. You know, I like to think of his spirit as incarnate. It's a dream, it's a nice dream. Naive, perhaps, of me. I like to think of Walt Whitman, you know, that one day I'll meet his spirit and I'll recognise its essence, whether he's born in a male or a female body. In fact, I would suspect that he'd be born in a female body. And he'd be a wild woman, a lover of the open, a champion of the brave, an American for sure, because he loved the dream of that land. And he'd never grow up. You know, he'd just be this wild girl running around the world, stirring up people's hearts, pulling serious people's hair. It's a nice dream. So Walt, if you're listening to this, and for sure one day you will, we salute your spirit, because you're one of us, you're an ecstatic, and our time is finally dawning. I think the other reason Walt chose me is because I love words. I'm a lover of words, and he was a lover of words. And yet we both also know that the words are not the thing. In the Song of the Rolling Earth, he said, "Were you thinking that those were the words, those upright lines, those curves, angles, dots? No, those are not the words. The substantial words are in the ground and sea. They're in the air. They're in you. Were you thinking that those were the words, those delicious sounds out of your friends' mouths? No, the real words are more delicious than they." The words just point us there. It's the frequency inside the words, in between the words, and as he said, it's here, where I'm sitting now, looking down over the green valleys with the blue sky and the white clouds majestically drifting over me, and the wind just lapping my papers, and the bees buzzing around me, and the ants crawling over my feet. Yeah, the real words are more delicious than they. And I want to finish with one final excerpt. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. And whoever walks a furlong without sympathy walks to his own funeral, dressed in his shroud. And I or you, pocketless of a dime, may purchase the pick of the earth, and to glance with an eye, or show a bean in its pod, confounds the learning of all times. And there is no trade or employment but the young man following it may become a hero. And there is no object so soft but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. And any man or woman shall stand cool and supercilious before 1,000,000 universes. And I call to mankind, be not curious about God, for I, who am curious about each, am not curious about God. No array of terms can say how much I am at peace about God and about death. I hear and behold God in every object, yet I understand God not in the least, nor do I understand who there can be more wonderful than myself. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God in each hour of the 24, and each moment then, in the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name, and I leave them where they are, for I know that others will punctually come forever and ever. And as to you, death, and you, bitter hug of mortality, it is idle to try and alarm me. And then he goes on, and the ending. Do you see, O my brothers and sisters? And this is him talking to us now. Do you see, O my brothers and sisters? It is not chaos or death. It is form and union and plan. It is eternal life. It is happiness. Joy. Here's the conclusion. Joy. This is Walt's message to us. Live. Trust life. Trust everything. Trust the shadow. Trust your fear. Trust your hatred. Trust your sex. Trust your longing. Trust your mind. It's all put there by God. Walt is such a tantric man. His is the tantric way, the way of yes. He's not a yogi. He's not for abstention or discipline or meditation. He's for surrender. His is the way of the heart, the way of the senses, the way of love. Walt reminds us, really, that our senses are how the divine feels through us. You know, whatever you want to call it, life, God, nature. She wants us to feel our freedom. She wants us to feel our naturalness. She wants us to feel our joy. And this is why I really believe that Walt called out from inside me at this time, because our world is about to go through a vast inner rebirth. And many of the paradigms we're living with now are so outdated. It's like sometimes I just think we live still in the Victorian age. You know, and our sexual values are so screwed up. So yes, a new world is coming with new kinds of relationships and with new values based on freedom and integrity and honesty and openness and innocence. And I'm not talking about another sexual revolution like in the 60s. This is a rebirth. This is not a revolution. This is a rebirth. And we're each going to have to surrender so much. Life is demanding a breakthrough inside us. And it's in us. In us. No one else is going to do it. No one else is going to do it unless you do it. It's down to you. It's down to you, the ecstatic. We're each alone in our breakthroughs. We have no idea how it's going to reshape our lives. We have to find our own way. We have to trust what's going on inside us. We have to trust it and live according to it. Walt is like this great-grandfather of our times. And he would have encouraged us to embrace everything. This technological revolution. He wouldn't deny any experience. He wouldn't deny life and experience. He'd be out texting poems from the wilderness. Trust it all, he says. Trust it all. Trust human nature. Trust war. Trust life. Trust death. It's all planned. Trust and live in the time you were born. But let your spirit soar ahead of your time, as his did. Because he's riding on the vision of Eden, this vision of the new world. And he knew it was coming, and it's still coming, and it's closer than ever. We just have to keep building and preparing for it inside. And it will come from the inside. It'll come as our hearts burst open and our voices sing out with the words of love. Our own words. And therefore we have to draw great courage and let those words out and speak those words and let them be heard.